The outsider's corner Olivia Reeves adjusted the strap of her navy blue cocktail dress for the 5th time in 10 minutes, trying to look occupied as guests swirled around her in a kaleidoscope of celebration and champagne. The ballroom of the Grand Harrison Hotel had been transformed into a fairy tale setting with thousands of twinkling lights, cascading white orchids, and tables draped in silk. Her cousin Rachel's wedding reception was, as expected, a picture-perfect affair, and Olivia was perfectly alone. She traced the rim of her half-empty champagne flute with her finger, watching as Rachel and her new husband twirled across the dance floor. They moved like they were floating, their happiness so palpable it seemed to cast its own light. Olivia smiled despite herself. Rachel deserved this joy, even if watching it made the empty chair beside Olivia feel that much emptier. Table 11. The wedding coordinator had said earlier with a sympathetic smile that Olivia wanted to scrub from her memory. In the back corner. She hadn't needed to add the singles table or the leftovers or the people. We had to invite but don't really want to. Highlight. Olivia got the message when she saw her. Placement as far from the wedding party as possible while still, technically being in the same room. 2 months ago, she would have had Jason beside her, his easy charm filling awkward silences and his hand warm in hers under the table. But Jason had decided their 3-year relationship was stagnating, and had moved on to someone more spontaneous, someone who didn't spend weekends curled up with design books and tea, someone who wasn't Olivia. More champagne, miss. Olivia looked up to find a server hovering beside her with a silver tray. She nodded gratefully and exchanged her empty glass for a full one. Thank you, she murmured, but he had already moved on to more important guests. Olivia sipped her champagne and surveyed her tablemates. To her left, her second cousin Margaret and her husband were arguing in whispers about their children's bedtime. Across from her, 2 elderly great-aunts were dozing off between courses. Beside them sat Rachel's former college roommate, who had spent the entire dinner on her phone. The final seat remained empty, someone sensible enough to send regrets rather than endure this elegant form of social torture. As the band struck up a new song, couples flooded the dance floor. Olivia's mother caught her eye from table 3, immediate family, of course, and gestured for her to join the festivities. Olivia shook her head slightly and raised her champagne in a small toast instead. She loved dancing but couldn't bear the thought of joining the floor alone, becoming an object of pity amid the paired-off guests. It was while surveying the room that she first noticed him watching her. Gabriel Blackwood occupied a place of honor at the second table, his imposing figure impossible to miss even seated. Uncle of the bride. Though uncle seemed an inadequate word for the man whose name appeared regularly in business journals, and occasionally in more scandalous contexts. Rachel had mentioned him with a mixture of awe and apprehension when discussing the guest list. Mom insisted we invite Uncle Gabriel, she had said. He probably won't come anyway. He rarely does family events. But he had come, and now his dark eyes were fixed on Olivia with an intensity that made her flush. She looked away quickly, smoothing her dress and pretending to be fascinated by the elaborate centerpiece before her. When she dared to glance up again, he was still watching her. There was something unsettling about his focus, not predatory but assessing, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve from across the room. Gabriel Blackwood was not what anyone would call conventionally handsome. His features were too sharp, his jawline too severe, yet there was something magnetic about him. A gravity that seemed to bend the very atmosphere of the room in his direction. He was in his mid-40s, Olivia guessed, with salt and pepper hair cut close to his scalp and a tailored charcoal suit that suggested wealth without flaunting it. That's Gabriel Blackwood, whispered Margaret's husband, noticing Olivia's gaze. Stays to himself mostly. Made his fortune in tech and real estate. Rumor has it he's got connections you don't want to ask about. Terrifying man, Margaret added. Never married. Probably 8 his wives. They laughed nervously at the joke, but their discomfort was evident. Olivia had heard similar whispers throughout the evening. Gabriel's cutthroat business tactics, his isolated estate outside the city, the mysterious circumstances surrounding his former business partner's sudden retirement to a remote island. The band switched to a slower song, and Olivia watched as Gabriel excused himself from his table. Her heart jumped inexplicably as he stood, his tall frame unfolding with a fluid grace that belied his size. For one irrational moment she thought he might be coming toward her. Instead, he moved to the bar where the crowd subtly parted to make way for him. Olivia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, and turned her attention back to her champagne. She didn't notice when he changed direction, She didn't see him approach her table with purposeful strides. She only became aware of his presence when a deep voice spoke directly beside her. "May I join you?" Olivia looked up, startled, into the face of Gabriel Blackwood. Up close, his eyes weren't simply dark, they were nearly black, intense, and unreadable. A thin scar traced the edge of his left eyebrow, the only flaw in his otherwise immaculate appearance. Before she could respond, he pulled out the empty chair beside her and sat down, setting 2 glasses of amber liquid on the table. "You looked like you could use something stronger than champagne," he said, sliding one toward her. Around them, conversation at the table stuttered to a halt. Margaret and her husband exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even the great aunts seemed to wake from their stupor, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Olivia stared at the offered drink, then at the man everyone seemed to fear, who had somehow selected her, out of everyone in the room, to approach. "Thank you," she said finally, taking the glass. "I'm Olivia Reeves, Rachel's cousin." Gabriel's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Gabriel Blackwood," he replied, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her chest. "Rachel's black sheep uncle. It seems we're both outcast tonight." He raised his glass slightly, a silent toast between strangers at the edge of a celebration. Olivia hesitated only a moment before touching her glass to his. Unexpected alliance. The whispers began almost immediately, rippling outward from table 11 like stones thrown in still water. Olivia could feel curious eyes on her back, could almost hear the speculation spreading through the reception. Why would Gabriel Blackwood, a man who barely acknowledged family, much less strangers, choose to sit with the unremarkable cousin in the corner? Gabriel himself seemed oblivious, or perhaps indifferent, to the attention. He sipped his whiskey and surveyed the room with the detached interest of someone watching a mildly entertaining play. "You don't look like you're enjoying yourself," he observed, his gaze returning to Olivia. Olivia considered offering a polite denial, the kind of social nicety expected at events like this. Instead, she found herself answering honestly. "I'm not," she admitted. "I hate being the odd one out, especially at family gatherings. Everyone's paired off and I'm—" She trailed off, realizing too late how pathetic she must sound. "Alone?" Gabriel supplied. There was no pity in his voice, just simple recognition. "I understand. I prefer it personally." Olivia tilted her head, studying him. "Then why come at all?" Something flickered across his face. Amusement, perhaps, at her directness. "Family obligation. Rachel is my sister's daughter, and despite what the rumor mill suggests, I'm not completely devoid of sentiment." He took another sip of whiskey. "Your turn. Why come if you knew you'd be miserable?" The question was blunt but not unkind. Olivia found his straightforwardness refreshing after an evening of superficial pleasantries. "Because not coming would have required explaining why to my mother, which would have led to a lecture about putting myself out there more, which would have been worse than just enduring this for one night." She gave a small, self-deprecating smile. The lesser of 2 evils. Gabriel nodded as if her answer confirmed something for him. "Families excel at creating no-win scenarios." Across the ballroom, Olivia noticed her Aunt Caroline watching them with naked concern. Caroline caught her eye and made a subtle but unmistakable "are you okay" gesture. Olivia gave a slight nod and turned back to Gabriel. "You've caused quite a stir," she said. "People are wondering if I should be concerned for my safety." Gabriel's laugh was unexpected, a deep, genuine sound that transformed his severe features into something almost approachable. "And should you be?" he asked, eyes glinting with mischief. Olivia surprised herself by laughing in return. "I'm starting to think your reputation might be somewhat exaggerated." "Only somewhat." He raised an eyebrow, the scar above it crinkling slightly. "Disappointing. I've worked hard to cultivate absolute terror." The music shifted to a popular dance number and the floor filled again with energetic couples. Margaret and her husband excused themselves to join the crowd, throwing curious glances backward as they went. Even the phone-obsessed roommate had wandered off, leaving Olivia and Gabriel with just the dozing great-aunts for company. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie slightly. The small gesture made him seem suddenly more human, less the figure of whispered legends. "What do you—" The conversation paused as servers appeared to clear plates for the next course. Olivia used the moment to observe Gabriel more closely. Despite his relaxed posture, there was something coiled about him like potential energy waiting to be released. His hands, she noticed, bore the subtle calluses of someone who had worked physically at some point in his life, at odds with his current polished appearance. When the servers departed, Gabriel leaned forward slightly. Would you like to know why I really came to sit here? He asked, his voice lowered. Olivia's pulse quickened inexplicably. Why? Because you were the only person in this room who looked as tired of pretending as I feel. He gestured toward the celebrating crowd. All these smiling faces, these performances of perfect lives. Exhausting, isn't it? Before Olivia could respond, Rachel's father approached their table, his expression a careful mask of cordiality. Gabriel, he said stiffly, we're about to cut the cake. Your sister was hoping you might join the family photos beforehand. Gabriel's expression cooled instantly, the momentary openness vanishing behind an impassive mask. Of course, Robert. I'll be there shortly. Robert hesitated, glancing between them. Olivia, your mother is looking for you as well. Thank you, Uncle Robert. Olivia replied, recognizing the rescue attempt for what it was. When Robert retreated, Gabriel turned back to Olivia with a wry expression. See what I mean? The performance continues. He stood, straightening his tie and resuming the persona of the formidable Gabriel Blackwood. But then he did something unexpected. He extended his hand to Olivia. Would you like to escape for a while? He asked. The hotel has gardens on the roof terrace. Much quieter than this circus. Olivia hesitated. Warning bells chimed distantly in her mind. This was Gabriel Blackwood after all, a man whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. Yet in the hour they'd spent talking, she'd glimpsed something beneath the fearsome exterior that intrigued her. Across the room, she caught her mother's concerned gaze, saw her Aunt Caroline whispering urgently to Rachel's mother. They were worried about her, afraid for her. Perhaps that was what made her decision. I'd like that, she said, placing her hand in his fingers closed around hers. Warm, solid, unexpectedly gentle. As he led her from the ballroom, Olivia felt the weight of stares following them, heard the hushed conversations pausing in their wake. For once she didn't care. After an evening, a lifetime really, of feeling invisible, there was something exhilarating about being seen, even if it was as the woman who left a wedding reception with the man everyone feared. Part 3. Midnight Confessions. The hotel's rooftop garden was a secluded oasis, 14 stories above the city. Potted trees strung with fairy lights created private alcoves among stone pathways. The air carried the scent of jasmine and the distant hum of traffic below. Most importantly, it was deserted, the evening chill keeping other guests indoors. Olivia breathed deeply, relieved to escape the reception's suffocating atmosphere. Gabriel walked slightly ahead, his tall figure silhouetted against the city lights. He stopped at the terrace edge, hands resting on the stone balustrade as he gazed outward. Better? He asked without turning. Much, Olivia replied, joining him at the railing. Thank you for the rescue. Gabriel glanced at her, something like amusement softening his features. I believe that's my line. You saved me from at least an hour of painful family photography. Happy to help, she said with a smile, though I suspect I'll be fielding concerned texts from my mother all night. She looked terrified when I left with you. As she should be, Gabriel replied, his voice light but with an undercurrent she couldn't quite identify. Didn't anyone warn you about me? The question hung between them, wrapped in layers of meaning. Olivia considered her response carefully. They did, she admitted. Quite thoroughly. And yet here you are. Olivia turned to face him fully. I've found that people rarely match their reputations, good or bad. Gabriel studied her for a long moment. An optimist, a realist, she corrected, with occasional optimistic tendencies. That earned her another of his rare smiles, slight but genuine. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of passing airplanes against the night sky. Olivia found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't all evening, perhaps all year. There was something oddly freeing about being with someone who expected nothing from her. No performance, no pretense. My father built that, Gabriel said suddenly, pointing to a gleaming tower in the financial district. His crowning achievement, Olivia followed his gaze. Blackwood Plaza, she recognized. It's beautiful. It's ostentatious, Gabriel replied without heat. But he was an ostentatious man. Is that where you started? Your father's company? Gabriel's laugh held no humor. No. My father made it very clear that his empire wasn't for me. He fell silent and Olivia thought he might leave it at that. But then he continued. I was the disappointment, too rough, too direct, too much like my mother. He groomed my brother Richard for succession. I was expected to stay out of the way. The bitterness in his voice was old and worn, like a stone polished by years of handling. What did you do instead? Olivia asked. Gabriel turned, leaning his back against the railing. The city lights cast half his face in shadow, the scar above his eye gleaming silver. I left home at 17 with $500 and a chip on my shoulder. Worked construction. Saved every penny, bought a condemned building in what was then a forgotten neighborhood. Renovated it myself, sold it for 3 times what I paid. Kept going. Olivia absorbed this, trying to reconcile the self-made man before her with the villain of Family Whispers. And now you own half the city. A quarter at most, he corrected with a ghost of a smile. Though not the half my father built. Spite as a business model? Gabriel laughed, the sound genuine this time. Partially. But also the freedom to build something that was entirely mine. Not an inheritance or a gift. Something no one could take away. Olivia nodded, understanding more than he might realize. I know something about that need. To create something that's solely yours. Gabriel's gaze sharpened with interest. Your design work? Yes. The corporate projects pay the bills, but my personal work... She hesitated, unused to discussing this with anyone. I've been developing a children's book series. Stories and illustrations about a little girl who discovers magic in ordinary places. Saying it aloud made Olivia feel suddenly vulnerable. She hadn't even told her mother about the project, fearful of dismissal or worse, pity. Have you shown it to publishers? Gabriel asked. Olivia shook her head. Not yet. It never seems finished enough. Perfect enough. Perfection is the enemy of completion, Gabriel observed, and completion is the prerequisite for success. Wisdom from the business world? Wisdom from someone who spent too long waiting for the perfect moment, he replied, something unreadable crossing his face. He straightened, changing the subject. My turn for questions. Why were you sitting alone tonight? You're intelligent, talented, and... He paused, his gaze moving over her with quiet appreciation. Beautiful. Where is your partner? The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught Olivia off guard. Non-existent at present, she answered. My boyfriend and I split up a few months ago. His loss, Gabriel said simply. Olivia smiled, despite herself. That's kind of you to say. Kindness has nothing to do with it, he replied. It's merely an observation. A chilly breeze swept across the terrace and Olivia shivered involuntarily. Without comment, Gabriel removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. The gesture was smooth, practiced, but not presumptuous. The fabric was warm from his body and carried the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. Thank you, she murmured, drawing it closer. Gabriel merely nodded, his attention caught by something below. Following his gaze, Olivia saw guests beginning to spill out of the hotel's main entrance. The reception was ending. We should go back, she said reluctantly, before they send a search party. Or assume I've disposed of your body in the East River, Gabriel added dryly. Olivia laughed. Is that what happened to your former business partner? The rumors are quite creative. Something dangerous flickered in Gabriel's eyes there and gone so quickly Olivia thought she might have imagined it. Marcus decided tropical retirement suited him better than our partnership, he said evenly. The truth is rarely as entertaining as speculation. They made their way back to the elevator. As they descended toward the lobby, Olivia became acutely aware of how different Gabriel seemed in the enclosed space. Larger, more intense, the controlled energy she'd sensed earlier now palpable in his stillness. Will they be very worried about you? He asked, breaking the silence. Probably, Olivia admitted. My family tends to overreact. I'm familiar with the tendency. The elevator doors opened onto the hotel lobby, now filled with departing wedding guests. Olivia slipped off Gabriel's jacket and handed it back with a smile of thanks. Several people turned to stare, conversations pausing mid-sentence. Gabriel seemed not to notice, his attention focused solely on Olivia. I've enjoyed your company tonight, Olivia Reeves. Likewise, she replied, meaning it. It wasn't the evening I expected. The best evenings rarely are. He reached into his inner pocket and extracted a business card, offering it to her. If you ever want to continue our conversation, or need a ruthless critique of your chillo. Dangerous invitation. 3 weeks passed before Olivia contacted Gabriel. 3 weeks of returning to her orderly life, her steady job, her quiet apartment. 3 weeks of convincing herself that the connection she'd felt on that rooftop was imagined, a product of champagne and the peculiar intimacy that sometimes arises between strangers. Yet Gabriel's business card remained in her wallet, a small rectangle of possibility she couldn't quite discard. The call that finally broke her resolve came from her agency's creative director, rejecting her proposal for a new client campaign. Too whimsical, Olivia. They want safe, proven concepts. Stick to what works. That evening, Olivia sat at her kitchen table surrounded by the illustrations for her children's book, a project she'd been working on with renewed energy since the wedding. The main character, a girl named Penny, faced her fears by transforming ordinary objects into magical tools. Olivia traced the outline of Penny's determined little face and thought of Gabriel's words. Perfection is the enemy of completion. Before she could reconsider, she picked up her phone and dialed the number on his card. He answered on the second ring. Gabriel Blackwood. It's Olivia, she said, suddenly uncertain. From Rachel's wedding. A brief silence then. The corner table. Of course. His voice warmed slightly. I was beginning to think you'd thrown my card away. I considered it, she admitted. Yet here we are. She could hear the smile in his voice. What can I do for you, Olivia Reeves? Olivia hesitated. What exactly had she called for? You offered a ruthless critique once. I'm wondering if that offer still stands. It does, he replied without hesitation. For your children's book? Yes. I've decided to stop waiting for perfection. A wise decision. When? Olivia hadn't expected such immediate acceptance. I don't know. Whenever you're... I'm attending a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum tomorrow evening, he interrupted. Not ideal for reviewing illustrations, but if you'd care to join me, we could discuss your project afterward. The invitation hung in the air between them. Olivia knew what accepting would mean. Stepping into Gabriel's world, being seen publicly with him, inviting speculation. Yet the alternative, returning to her carefully ordered life, without taking this risk, suddenly seemed unbearable. I'd like that, she said, finally. Good. The single word carried a satisfaction that sent warmth through her chest. My car will pick you up at 7. The following evening, a sleek black car arrived precisely at 7. The driver, a discreet man named Collins, opened the door for her without comment. Olivia smoothed the emerald silk of her dress, a splurge she justified as a professional investment, and settled into the leather seat, a portfolio of her illustrations beside her. Gabriel was waiting at the museum entrance, his commanding presence drawing eyes despite the crowd of New York's elite. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. When he spotted Olivia, something shifted in his expression, a momentary softening that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. You look beautiful, he said simply, offering his arm as they ascended the museum steps. Olivia became aware of curious glances and whispered comments. Gabriel Blackwood rarely attended social functions, and never with a companion. Everyone's staring, she murmured. Not at me, he replied, his hand covering hers where it rested on his arm. Inside, the great hall had been transformed for the gala. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white silk. A string quartet played discreetly in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres among Manhattan's wealthiest and most powerful. Gabriel guided Olivia through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing her to selected guests as a talented artist or a brilliant designer. Never once did he explain her presence or their connection, as if her place beside him required no justification. Gabriel. What a surprise! They turned to find a silver-haired man regarding them with thinly veiled curiosity. Beside him stood a younger woman in a dress that probably cost more than Olivia's monthly rent. Charles, Gabriel acknowledged coolly. Olivia, this is Charles Westfield. We occasionally find ourselves on opposite sides of property acquisitions. What Gabriel means, Charles said with a tight smile, is that he's made a habit of outbidding me on buildings I've spent months pursuing. Only the ones worth having, Gabriel replied. The tension between them was palpable. Olivia glanced between the men, sensing history beyond simple business rivalry. And who might this lovely creature be? Charles asked, turning to Olivia with exaggerated charm. Before she could answer, Gabriel's hand settled at the small of her back, a subtle but unmistakable claim. Olivia Reeves, a remarkable talent I had the good fortune to meet recently. Charles's eyes narrowed slightly. I see. Well, Miss Reeves, you should know that you're... Companion has quite a reputation in our circles. So I've heard, Olivia replied evenly, though I find reputations are often more fiction than fact. Charles' smile tightened. In Gabriel's case, I assure you the stories barely scratch the surface. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Did he tell you what happened to the last partner who crossed him? Gabriel's posture shifted subtly, a gathering of energy that made Olivia think of a predator preparing to strike. Charles, he said, his voice dangerously soft. Surely you're not still bitter about the riverfront project. It's been, 2 years? Charles flushed. You manipulated the zoning board. I presented a better proposal, Gabriel corrected. Your failure to secure the property was due to your own overconfidence, not any action on my part. For a tense moment, Olivia thought Charles might escalate the confrontation. Instead, he forced a laugh. Always the diplomat, Blackwood. Miss Reeves, do be careful. Gabriel collects beautiful things, but he rarely keeps them for long. With that parting shot, Charles guided his companion away, disappearing into the crowd. I apologize for Charles, Gabriel said once they were alone. He's never learned to lose gracefully. Olivia studied his face, searching for signs of the ruthlessness Charles had implied. What really happened with your former business partner? Marcus, was it? Gabriel's expression remained carefully neutral. Marcus embezzled from our company, then tried to frame me when the discrepancies were discovered. I gave him a choice, face charges or surrender his stake and leave. He chose the latter. And the riverfront project was awarded to my company after both sides presented their proposals fairly, he replied. Charles had political connections but a weaker plan. He's convinced himself I somehow cheated him. Olivia nodded, absorbing this information. Part of her wanted to believe Gabriel completely, yet she couldn't ignore the undercurrent of danger she sensed in him. The evening progressed more smoothly after that. Gabriel introduced Olivia to people who could potentially be interested in her children's book. A publisher, an agent, even the owner of a gallery that showcased illustration art. Each conversation left her with a business card and an invitation to follow up. It was nearly midnight when they finally escaped the gala. In the car, Gabriel loosened his bow tie with a sigh of relief. Social obligations, he said by way of explanation. Necessary evils in my line of work. Thank you, Olivia said, for the introductions. You didn't have to do that. Gabriel turned to her, his expression serious. Your talent deserves recognition, Olivia. I merely opened a few doors. You'll have to walk through them yourself. As the car glided through the nearly empty streets, Olivia felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and unease. Gabriel Blackwood was exactly who everyone said he was. Powerful, calculating, potentially dangerous. Yet he was also something else entirely. Thoughtful, perceptive, unexpectedly supportive. Your place or mine? He asked suddenly. To review your illustrations, he clarified, seeing her startled expression. Olivia hesitated only briefly. Yours, she decided. She wasn't quite ready to end the evening, to break whatever spell had been cast between them. Gabriel nodded, giving Collins quiet directions. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a sleek high-rise overlooking Central Park. The doorman greeted Gabriel by name, and a private elevator whisked them to the penthouse floor. Gabriel's home was both exactly what Olivia had expected, and nothing like it at all. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular city views. The furniture was minimal but exquisite, each piece clearly selected with care. What surprised her were the walls, covered with art ranging from Renaissance masters to contemporary works, displayed without pretension or theme, simply pieces that had spoken to him. You collect art? She observed. I acquire what moves me, Gabriel corrected, helping her out of her coat. Would you like a drink before we look at your work? Over glasses of excellent Cabernet. Olivia spread her illustrations across Gabriel's dining table. He studied each one carefully, asking questions about her process, her inspirations, the story she was trying to tell. His critique was indeed ruthless, pointing out inconsistencies in character design, questioning color choices, challenging narrative decisions, but never cruel. You have exceptional talent, he concluded, but you're holding back. These illustrations are technically perfect but too safe. Your main character needs to face real danger for her courage to matter. Olivia started to defend her work, then stopped, recognizing the truth in his assessment. I've been afraid to go darker, she admitted. It's a children's book, child.